my story today comes principally from this book. It's by Florian Capps, who we will meet in the story in a minute. It's called Polaroid, the Magic Material. And the reason that I wanted to give this talk is that I think it's just such a really interesting story. And it's got sort of drama and personalities and fair sort of splash of coincidences, which I find entertaining. And I think it's such a good story that somebody should make a film of the book. This is just a reminder of the first Impossible story. The whole Polaroid era was driven by Dr. Edwin Land, and when he left, things sort of started going downhill, really. So I'm going to start the story on Saturday, the 14th of June 2008, in the middle of the story. So we're going to do the sort of standard filmic drama of how this adventure is reaching a bit of a climax, and then we're going to go back in a flashback to see how the characters got to this point. So Florian Doc Capps is the main protagonist. He's often called Doc. He's got a doctorate in spider eye research from the University of Vienna, and obviously a prime candidate for being a Polaroid evangelist, but we'll figure out how on earth he got to be a Polaroid evangelist in the next part of the story. So he got an invite to this closing event from Paul Telford, managing director of Polaroid UK and responsible for other parts of the Polaroid empire. Florian Capps had been campaigning for many years prior to 2008 to keep Polaroid alive. Paul Telford in the Polaroid empire was one of the few people sympathetic to that way of thinking, and he gave Florian Capps an invite to the closing event in the Netherlands, in Enschede. And at that closing event, Florian Capps met Andre Bozeman. Andre was the senior factory production manager, and he'd been given the task of looking after Florian Capps for the day to make sure he didn't cause too much trouble, because Polaroid regarded Florian Capps as a troublemaker because he'd been campaigning to keep Polaroid alive and Polaroid was just closing things down. So they announced in February 2008 that the 3 remaining factories that hadn't been closed to that date would be closing. There was worldwide uproar, but it was too late to do anything about it and go back on that decision. So by the time we get to June, it is the time for the closing of the Enschede factory. The demolition, this is the Saturday, the demolition is scheduled for the Monday. And that's it. This is the plant that manufactures SX70 and 600 instant film. It's the end of Polaroid film, because it's just going to go after this few days. So Florian meets with Andre Bozeman and they start talking about what on earth they can do about this. But, you know, surely it's too late. Bit of a drum roll, and we have got our climax for the film, and then we have to go in a bit of a flashback to see how we got to this point. So I think David's talk gave you know, a really interesting background to what I put on this slide. So thanks for that, David. Polaroid sales were in free fall in the 2000s. Obviously, analog was dead, digital was everything. Why would anybody want anything analog anymore? Because digital was the new wonder child that everybody was going to switch to. And in 2001, they filed for bankruptcy and they were sold. And the next character that we meet is Tom Petters. So Tom Petters will play a major role in our film story later on. And he bought the company in 2005 and for to 6 million. You can see how the valuation it was already, you know, much less than it had been previously. And he got his people, senior people together, and he said to them, okay, the sales are declining. When's it going to reach effectively zero? And they said to him, well, the way the curve's going, it's going to reach zero in 10 years' time. And he said, okay, we put in place a plan to manufacture enough stuff to, because they manufactured the different parts of the film, the negative and the positive were manufactured in other plants. And the elements came together in the different manufacturing plants for the actual assembly. So the Netherlands plant that manufactured SX17600 took its positive and negative film from other places and its batteries from America, and they were all put together there. And he said, we're going to make enough stock in these other factories for 10 years and just make that stock now. And then we'll start closing all the factories. So that started in 2005, and there were successive factory closures. And as you've just seen, by the time they got to 2008, they made an announcement to close the last 3. So how did Florian Kaps get to where he was in the closing event in the Enschede factory in 2008? So in 2004, he was working for Lomo in Vienna. That was their headquarters. Hope you're carefully studying the Lomo story, which Timothy is writing up in Photographical World. I've been a keen follower of the Lomo story. I think it's really interesting in terms of how they've kept analog technologies alive. And what he did at Lomo in 2004 was he got together a load of different analog technologies. And he put a Polaroid back on a Holga Lomo camera, and he took his first Polaroid shot, and he became a Polaroid evangelist. He was just captivated by the magic of the Polaroid film, and you know, the way that it looks, the way that it develops, the fact that it's a unique piece of image. You know, you can't get another copy of it without doing a photographic copy, which is not the same. And he quit his job at Lomo to become a Polaroid evangelist, to keep Polaroid alive. Now, there's a guy that he met called Professor Ankim, and he was also into this idea that Polaroid would come good, even though there was digital. He invented this theory, which is on the graph there, that it would be digital that was actually responsible for the rebirth of Polaroid, because people would take digital, they would get dissatisfied with it, they would rediscover the analog beauty, and the curve would do this hockey stick, and analog would be alive and kicking and in full production all over again, because people had become dissatisfied with digital. And in some ways that's been a reasonable prediction, because that is what has actually happened, not maybe to the extent that Professor Ankim expected or predicted, as big as he said, but it's definitely the case that people have not been happy with digital imaging, and they've gone back to analog in many ways. So what Florian did was to keep pestering Polaroid, and his nearest senior marketing people were in Frankfurt, and he kept saying to them, I want to come and do a presentation to you. I want to show you how you're wrong in closing down Polaroid. You've just got to keep it alive because it's so important. And eventually, after months of pestering, they said, oh, for goodness sake, the only way to keep you quiet is going to be to let you come along and present to us. So he was supposed to present to both of them. As he's coming over, 40 minutes before the appointment, the senior guy, Mahler, tells him that he's not going to be able to attend, and he's only going to be able to present to Michael Hefner. And the reason for that is that he's got to fly out to the US and meet Michael Peters, who is going to tell him that he's going to be closing down the Polaroid factories. So bit of a coincidence that this happens at the same time. This is a story of coincidences. And he presents to the guy that he's got left to present to, and he says, this is going to happen. You've got to keep Polaroid alive. And the guy says, well, you're too late. My boss has gone over to America to be told that we're closing everything down. Digital is king. Polaroid's going to bring out new digital stuff. And but since you're such a brilliant evangelist for Polaroid, why don't you become a Polaroid retailer? That's normally really hard. I'm going to make it easy for you. Here's the sales agreement, and I can sell you 10,000 packs of film for the bargain price of 180k. And Florian was just sort of naively bewildered. He thought he was on a completely different track from where he'd been intended. And he said, well, I haven't sold, I don't sell film. And the guy said, well, you are a salesman. And if you believe those predictions in your presentation pack, you're going to sell that film in a few weeks. So what's the matter with you? So he manages to convince his wife and another investor, and they decide that that's what they're going to do. So along with his partner, Florian Caps founds both an online gallery called Polar Noir and also an online shop. So 10,000 packs of film. One of the things that he didn't quite read in the small print of the license agreement was that they were going to deliver it all at once. So there's his office with 10,000 packs of film in it. And it's at this point that I'm going to talk a bit about the being a Polaroid psychotherapist, because these people that latched onto liking the Polaroid images, they're not like us. So the majority of us enthusiastic photographic collector club people are, a little ancient. And the people that liked the new Polaroid people, they didn't find this nostalgic. They weren't keen on Polaroid because they were sympathetic it was going to go out and be lost. They just were young and they had an incredible curiosity. And to them, expensive meant it was really valuable having this unique image. Bad quality meant it was really rich in characteristics, and unpredictable, excitingly challenging. So why was it bad quality and unpredictable? Because Polaroid had spent decades refining its process. They wouldn't sell Florian or some batch of film that he really tried to persuade them to give him that had an orange cast on it, because they were obsessed with quality control. But once the stock started going out of date, you started getting all these artifacts that weren't there before. And there's two names there of some typical art photographers. Stephanie Schneider, there's a YouTube video where she, it's quite a while ago now, where she opens up her fridge and it's full of this old stock, and she specialized in photographing stuff on Polaroid old stock where the chemicals didn't go across the film properly, where it was very faded, and that was part of the art. So Florian Capps introduces this word, which I love, light paintings. So they're not photographs, they're unique pieces of image, and they're newly interpreted by these new art photographers as chemical adventures. So Florian Capps, with his partner, sets up unsaleable.com on the 2 a.m. 2nd of June 2005. Can't take the Polaroid in focus because it's 2 a.m. in the morning, and he's off selling his stock online. The other guy, there's a guy that phones him up at this point, Filippino Centenari, and he says, "Hey Doc, is this film of yours manipulatable?" And Florian says, "Sorry, what? Say that word again." He says, "Is it manipulatable?" So Florian never heard of manipulating Polaroids, where you squidge the chemistry around with a blunt instrument, and it was. And there's some really interesting art by this guy, but in the absence of that, I'm going to show you some of mine. So here's some of Steve Sargent's light paintings that have been manipulated, and you can tell me what you think of those some other time. And now in our story, Mr. Cad of Croydon makes an appearance with his special film. So for the purposes of this chapter of the story, Mr. Cad's got quite an appropriate name, because Florian and Lex visit him. They're on the search for Polaroid cameras, and the very generous Mr. Cad says, "I've got a whole palette of film that I can sell you, and you know, you're obviously quite enthusiastic. Haven't sold to you before. You can have a newcomer deal at a special price." So they buy this film from him. They do the first test shots, and it looks like that. It's 4 years expired, and they phone him up and they say, "What is this stuff?" And he says, "Well, you must have realized that from the special price that there was something wrong with it. So, you know, you bought it now." So they didn't know what to do. They looked into disposing of it. Because every pack's got a battery in it, it would have cost them more to dispose it than what they paid to buy it. So they then realize, getting more in touch with art photographers that are using the old expired film at this point, that this might be able to turn it from an disadvantage to an advantage. They do a global email campaign. This is specially obtained fire expired film, double the normal price. It sells out in 4 days. So it just gives you a flavor of the sort of stuff that was happening at the time. And that's the beginning of their story of they move into their own space. They collect huge piles of old Polaroid stock, and they're off selling this stuff to to this new band of art photographers. And here's some of mine. So I just find the images really interesting and evocative, and I love making light paintings with it. So we're back to the 14th of June 2008, having realized how Florian got to be where he is. He's talking to Andre Bozeman, and Andre has been very disappointed about having to close down the factory that he's been in for manufacturing this iconic film. And Florian realizes that Andre's got a plan for keeping the manufacturer alive on a small scale. And he says to him, I need one essential building, I need 1 year, I need 10 people, and there's 55% chance of success of being able to produce a new film. And Florian realizes that this is just the perfect partnership of the production engineer, because he would have no clue about how to do any of that, and him as the salesperson with the sales channel. He's got the ready customers to be able to sell this new film to, and he's got 1 year of stock left on his current rate of sale, because it's 2008 now. It's 3 years after we started the closures, and the film's all going out of date. The fire expired film from the lovely Mr. Cad has all gone. And on Saturday they talk about there might be a chance of creating a new film. They keep talking. Florian's on Belgian beer, and Andre's on coffee, and they are just on fire in their talking. And Father's Day is a sacred day in the Netherlands. Apparently, you cross it at your peril. You have to be at home for Father's Day, and Andre isn't. He's making plans with Florian on how they are going to be able to keep the factory alive. And Monday it's scheduled for demolition, and he chains himself to the he tells his people that he's going to not allow it to be demolished. One of the splicing machines that Andre says, we've got no chance of doing this without this splicing machine that has already been sold online a few days ago prior to the factory closure. You've got to buy it back, Florian, otherwise we've got no chance. So instead of the motorbike that Florian was going to buy, he's got a 10 grand splicing machine, which is a lot uglier than the motorbike he was thinking of. And there you can see a Polaroid of the Impossible team that he handpicks and starts up with. And they get a week's stay of execution from Polaroid's management. and they know what troublemakers Florian has been, and they say to them, okay, just calm down, and we'll try to sort something out with you. You've got a week, and a week turns to a month, and June to September, for God's sake, they've going backwards and forwards and backwards and forwards to the Polaroid management, and they're saying, what do we want to buy this factory for scrap value. And the executives say, oh, just go away. This is impossible. You can't do what you're talking about. And every time they say, this is impossible, this is impossible. And the one good thing that Florian says came out of all these discussions is the name for his company, because he called it the Impossible Company, because everyone told him it was impossible. So the next bit of the story is the thing that happens in a film that is a ridiculous coincidence, and you say, nah, that's never going to happen in real life. So in September, the FBI raid the Polaroid headquarters, and they arrest the senior Polaroid management team. Petters is accused of a Ponzi scheme. 2 years later, he goes to jail for 50 years. That's the outcome of the court case 2 years later. So he was a crook. And Florian gets a phone call from Paul Telford, who says, I am now responsible for 1 week for what Polaroid have called the Enstell factory case, and arrange for the bank transfer of 180 grand, finalize your arrangements with the real estate people, and you've got it. 5 days later, Florian and his people own the factory, and they've done the deal with the real estate company. And that's like the beginning of what they need to do next, because they've been fighting for this. But you can see their impossible to-do list. They've got to get a team, they've got to move equipment, it's all gone damp. They've got 100,000 batteries coming from Polaroid America that get fried on the container. The chemicals are no longer available. The red sealing chemical that stops the goo squishing out is deemed carcinogenic by the EU. That's one of the reasons that you get squidges out, or they did certainly first of all, because they couldn't use the old sealing chemical. They need new components, and most importantly, they needed a negative and a positive. And this shows you, in my opinion, Fabian being a bit naive, really. So where does he go first to try and get the negative and positive for his film? He goes to Fuji, because he thinks Fuji is going to be really pleased to help. And he gets an audience with the head of business development, and he puts his presentation forward, and the guy says, it's really good that you come over to see me. Thank you for your collaboration, but I'm not interested. But to show a sign so your trip's not wasted, he takes a Fuji calendar down from the wall and says, why don't you have this calendar of a token of your coming all this way to see me? And it's November, and the calendar's got 2 months left to run. So Fuji's obviously out of the question. He might have thought of that originally. And he goes to Harman, and Harman are immediately sympathetic. They're the first people he speaks to that come up with solutions rather than problems. And they do their first experiments in quite soon after that. And they make the first film ready for launch at the beginning of 2010. And they have to sell it because they've overrun their year that Florian had the stock for. they the Ilford management look at the first results and make the comment that it looks more like ancient paintings than something Ilford would like to be associated with. But the cat's out of the bag. They're already selling it. And I just thought you'd like to see a comparison between the impossible lab tests and the SX70, Dr. Edwin Land lab tests. So what you may or may not know is that SX70 was the name that Edwin Land gave to his instant film project right from 1945. Didn't use that code name until he made something that he thought was the right thing when he produced what we know as the SX70. There's another amazing coincidence. Bottom right, there is on that PX Impossible test shot is a team of engineers from a new startup called Innovis Code. So what is the chance that a team of people would leave AGFA and make a new startup coating plant in Düsseldorf, 2 hours drive from Enschede and Florian? What is the chance that that team was part of AGFA's secret instant film project? So in the 1980s, AGFA had a project to make instant film. They had it nearly ready for launch when Kodak lost the patent case to Polaroid. And of course, it was deemed too risky and they mothballed it. But it is all in the minds of these people who are now able to partner with Florian and help him with color. So this is the first film. It's black and white, it's fading. There's loads of things wrong with it, but they give it to 42 artists and the artists are enraptured with it and produce all these images. And this is the press conference in New York where they say Polaroid has been reborn and this is just the start of the journey. So they latched onto the idea, obviously, that you use artists to promote things. And, that's been done a lot by Polaroid with Ansel Adams and Andy Warhol, lots of other people. And that's the beginning of the rebirth. Here are some of my shots on different versions of the Impossible stock. And here are some black and white shots from Batalic Tin Mine Coast in Cornwall, which I just love. I just love producing light paintings with this stuff. So the next years are the story of improvement, the story of them introducing a color film. He's got a photo of his son in the book. When he was trying to develop color, his family lost interest. Every time he produced a new test shot, they said to him, "You sure you haven't put black and white in there, Dad?" He wants to rebrand it as Polaroid. He tries to do that in 2013, and he gets all the packaging designed by this guy. And the new Polaroid management are quite sympathetic to that, but it falls through at the last minute. And that's really at the point that Fabian leaves, and it's taken over by a new team of people, which it's under now. But they do go on to acquire the Polaroid brand, brand themselves as Polaroid Originals in 2017, and just plain Polaroid in 2020. And I'm going to leave the last word to Fabian, Doc Caps. all that really matters is the magic material that has been carefully filmed with your precious, most precious moments and record anything you like. I'm more than proud to have helped keep it alive together with a countless number of other crazy minds. We all shared the conviction this magic material deserves the chance to cast its spell on many more generations of photographers. And as I say, got a few references there, most of the materials from the book.